Prime Field.
Welcome to Prime Field. On November 4th in Annapolis, one game will function as a diagnostic. UConn's season opener against Louisville will reveal whether roster depth is a championship asset or a structural liability. The reigning national champion arrives as the preseason number 1. The roster reads like a coach's dream on paper. 15 players, multiple reliable minutes, and the kind of rotation depth Geno Auriemma has not coached since the post-Paige Beckers transition. But paper depth and tournament depth are different things. This film asks a single precise question. Can UConn's bench perform under high leverage conditions? Or will it break the way one-dimensional benches have broken elite teams in March? The answer begins with minutes. It begins with matchups. It begins on November 4th, and what follows is a close reading of the data, the players, and the strategic stakes. UConn's 2024-25 title run was notable for structure more than flash. 8 players averaged 15 or more minutes per game. That distribution mattered. Paige Buckers, 30.2 MPG, Sarah Strong, 28.7 MPG, and Azzi Fudd, 26.5 MPG, were the 3 non-negotiables. Behind them, role players logged meaningful time. Ashlynn Shade averaged 22.2 minutes and 7.7 points. Caitlin Chen played 23.4 minutes and averaged 6.9 points. KK Arnold and Jana El Alfy each provided more than 16 minutes per game. Statistically, the top 5 accounted for 62.8% of total team minutes. The remaining 37.2% was distributed among role players. That split allowed stylistic flexibility. It permitted line changes that resembled hockey. Different combinations, different assignments, the ability to swap matchups without a steep drop in production. For 2025-26, the roster retains breadth, but not all minutes are settled. Sarah Strong is elevated to preseason number 1 status. Azzi Fudd enters healthier than in recent seasons. Yet several contributors remain unproven in high-leverage minutes. Jana El Alfy missed time with injury last season. Ice Brady logged 500 minutes and averaged 3.6 points. True freshman Gandhi Malou-Mamel has not yet played NCAA minutes. The critical operational threshold is clear. If 5 or 6 players outside the top 3 can each produce roughly 10 points and 3 rebounds in tournament conditions, the bench functions as a multiplier. If only 3 bench players become reliably productive, UConn's supposed depth collapses to a top-heavy rotation and its March ceiling narrows. November 4th will show whether the line change model is sustainable. The way minutes are distributed in Annapolis will forecast how the rotation withstands the stresses of conference play and the NCAA tournament. Ayanna Patterson's trajectory is an unresolved factor. Her high school resume and recruit ranking arrived with clear expectations. Injuries limited her availability over 2 seasons. In the 2022-23 season, she logged 30 games and posted a rebound rate that suggested interior instincts. Her profile is not primarily scoring. It is possession management. It is defensive rebounding and paint disruption. Against Louisville, Patterson's value will be measured by one concrete metric: defensive rebound percentage over meaningful minutes. If Patterson posts a defensive rebound rate above 20% in 15 or more minutes, she supplies the Husky bench with an interior anchor. That anchor matters because Louisville's returning roster lacks some of the interior holdovers from the previous year. Patterson's minutes and rebound efficiency would absorb pressure at the 4 spot. Availability is the other half of the variable. Repeated injuries have made Patterson an enigma. High upside in small samples, uncertain reliability across a season. The November 4th game will offer the earliest public test of whether her profile can shift from potential to functional contribution in tournament-style conditions. Louisville's roster philosophy contrasts with UConn's. In 2024-25, only 5 Cardinals averaged 15 or more minutes per game. That top 5 accounted for roughly 71.9% of Louisville's scoring. Tajiana Roberts, Jada Curry, Olivia Koch, and Jalea Williams formed a concentrated offensive nucleus. The bench supplied supplementary shot making rather than structural offense. That concentration creates a paradox. A starter-heavy roster can be more resistant to catastrophic bench nights. If the starters carry 60+% of the offensive load, then a cold bench is a problem, but not necessarily ruinous. Conversely, a deeper roster that depends on bench players to replicate starter principles becomes vulnerable if those bench players recruit them to regress under pressure. Put another way, Louisville's bench is less likely to generate a large share of points, but it also faces lower variance per night. UConn's bench can deliver a higher ceiling. It can also produce higher variance. The November 4th matchup will test which model holds up when defensive intensity and matchup pressure increase. Three measurable data points will reveal the broader narrative. First, bench scoring share. If UConn's bench delivers roughly 38% or more of the team's points, depth is functioning as a multiplier. Second, combined role minutes for Patterson, Ice Brady, and Jana El Alfy. If those three log 20 or more combined minutes with positive on-off differentials, the bench has usable tournament reliability. Third, Louisville's starters must be tested for durability. If they can absorb defensive pressure without fouling or collapsing in the closing minutes, UConn's depth advantage shrinks. Shooting efficiency matters as well. A bench that produces 40-plus points on 48% or better field goal shooting is not merely deep, it is complementary. Conversely, a bench that produces volume on poor efficiency imposes systemic costs, transition exposure, rebounding deficits, and late-game fatigue. These are the concrete metrics that will determine whether depth is an asset or a liability. The Big East is not a one-team conference. Marquette, Creighton, DePaul, and Villanova can threaten. In a conference gauntlet, distribution of meaningful minutes across 8 or more players is a margin of victory asset. It helps absorb foul trouble. It provides rest. It complicates scouting. If 3 bench players average 12-plus minutes and shoot above 40%, UConn can preserve depth into the NCAA tournament with relative freshness. Historical precedent frames the stakes. Teams that have converted depth into championships did so by specializing bench units in roles that complemented starters, transition defense, perimeter spacing, or specific matchup responsibilities. UConn's 2024-25 model replicated that structure. Depth without role clarity is inert. The 2025-26 roster must prove that bench players execute the same offensive principles as the starters, not merely that they exist on the roster. If UConn survives Louisville's defensive intensity while deploying 8 or more players to meaningful effect, the Huskies will have signaled a repeatable model. That model will not be rhetorical. It will be quantifiable. Distributed minutes, supplemental scoring, interior rebounding, and sustainable efficiency. Conversely, a game that reveals a top-heavy rotation, inconsistent bench efficiency, or unreliable interior presence will reduce the Huskies' March projection. November 4th is not a destiny sentence. It is a diagnostic session. The game will not decide a championship, but it will reveal whether UConn's deepest roster in years can function as a true multiplier under pressure. The answers will inform strategy across the Big East and reset expectations for the tournament path ahead. Depth in modern college basketball is both tactical and cultural. When a roster distributes minutes effectively, it alters preparation, fatigue management, and match planning. When depth fails, it exposes the narrowness beneath a team's surface. UConn's 2024-25 championship demonstrated how structured depth can carry a season. The 2025-26 opening test in Annapolis will show whether that structure endures. Legacy will be assigned later by results. For now, the impact is procedural. How a coach allocates minutes, how a program develops role players, and how a team designs contingency plans for injury and foul trouble. If the Huskies prove the line change model is sustainable, the season will begin with a public demonstration of a repeatable blueprint. If not, the season will remain a question of adjustment. Either outcome changes the conversation. Either outcome refines the metrics program's value. That is the true inheritance of a single November game. Not the scoreboard alone, but the lessons it imposes on roster construction, coaching decisions, and the strategic grammar of championship basketball. The season begins in Annapolis. The diagnostics start when the clock starts.
Prime Field